All right, good evening, everyone. This is a regular scheduled meeting of the Business Economic Development Committee. It is February 3rd, 2025. The time is 7:43. Committee members are Fish, Councilor Hawes, Councilor Leonard, Councilor Mallard. Also at the table, and myself, Councilor Fournier. Also at the table are Councilor Beck, Councilor Chair Pelletier, Councilor Dean, and we're good. First on the agenda is the housing study.
Yes, Sarah Kirk from HRNA Associates is here to present sort of the final draft of the housing production study. This was a study that started last year as HRNA had done the study for the statewide housing production. And so we had contacted them and said, hey, can you take what you did for the state and distill it down to usable for Bangor? And so this is the culmination of their work. And so Sarah, take it away. Oh, you're muted.
I was just noticing. Okay, thank you so much, Anne. As Anne mentioned, this is the final presentation of the housing study that HRNA has been working on with the city. This is, I believe, the third time that we're presenting to this particular body. So I'm excited to just share with you all a brief update on work that's been done since the last time that we presented, and a little bit about the final deliverables and recommendations that we produced. So just to jump right in, you know, this work really focused on first understanding demand for housing in Bangor, as well as understanding some market challenges, unmet needs, gaps in housing affordability. We did a lot of engagement with stakeholders. We talked to people familiar with the market. We talked to people familiar with housing challenges. We looked at a lot of data, building on work that was done at the state level to understand what kinds of housing is most in need in the city, who needs housing, and also to understand why those gaps exist. Based on that, we then worked with staff to develop preliminary strategies. The last time that we spoke with this committee, we were talking about some of those preliminary strategies and how feasible and interesting and potentially impactful they might be. From there, we identified priorities and created some more refined recommendations, as well as an implementation plan. As I mentioned, this is the third time that we're presenting to the BED committee, and sort of building on things that we had shared previously. So I'm not going to rehash all of the things that we previously presented. Based on the discussion that we had in September with the BED committee, we worked with city staff to produce two final deliverables. The first is a final report on housing needs in Bangor. This is really a public-facing deliverable meant to summarize what exists in the housing supply, what are the demographic and population trends in the city, where are the gaps, and a high-level overview of recommendations, making sure throughout to highlight areas where the city is already doing a lot of the really important things to overcome some of those challenges, but making recommendations about sort of additional actions that the city could take. The second deliverable is a much more detailed implementation guide. This is a more of an internal guide for city staff, providing detail about how to implement recommendations. There's examples of best practices, outlines of major kind of decision points and capacity requirements for the recommendations that we've made. So those are two different deliverables that both kind of deal with the recommendations in for housing production. One of the things that we knew we needed to deal with for this study was identifying what are the types of, who are the people and what are the types of homes that are most in need that aren't being produced. So just to start out, what we found is that you need more homes for residents of all incomes, but there's a few types of populations with particularly high needs that the city can focus on. So that includes low and moderate income workers, first-time home buyers, so making sure that we're trying to preserve access to home ownership, and seniors. Some of the home types that will help both to serve these populations and to grow the housing supply more generally. Smaller homes, when I say smaller, I mean studio and 1 bedroom. There's a lot of 2, 3, 4 bedroom homes in the city, but not a lot of smaller homes, and there's a lot of smaller households. Townhomes, again, as a way to accommodate more households on the same property, as a way to lower construction costs and therefore reduce barriers to home ownership by sort of reducing the purchase price of new construction homes, and more multi-unit homes as well. When we talk about tools for affordable housing, and this is what I think that we talked about last time, we usually talk about 3 overarching categories. So land use, or what you can do with zoning authority and regulations to increase supply of housing. Subsidy, so where you can put public funds in order to influence either what gets built or how affordable it is or who it's affordable to. And then finally, tenants' rights, preserving housing affordability and stability using laws that protect occupants. For this study, the city has already done a fair amount in the tenants' rights space, and the focus of this study was also on ways to increase housing supply. So whereas tenants' rights are a really critical piece of a comprehensive approach to affordable housing, they don't fundamentally don't increase the supply of housing. And so we have focused our recommendations in land use and subsidy, and not as much in tenants' rights. Within the sphere of land use, there's 2 primary recommendations that we've made, really focused on building developer capacity and encouraging more private investment in housing. So the first is continuing to do work that the city's already doing to pursue zoning changes that reduce developer risk by making it more certain what can be built where, and by making more housing development more feasible. This includes things like ensuring that attached housing is allowed in all residential districts, and reducing minimum lot sizes. I know the city's already done a little bit of that, but really taking a look across all your residential zones at the minimum lot sizes and making sure that they're reasonable and accommodating housing development. The second recommendation is conducting direct outreach to attract and build the capacity of developers. This is about 2 things. One, identifying who your local developers are, or local actors who might be interested in investing in providing housing. And the second piece of that is about working with developers who are active in the broader New England region or the state as a whole, and helping them understand that the city has a real interest in increasing housing supply, understand the city's regulations, and make it easy for developers who maybe haven't done work with the city before to come in and understand what they can get built, and that they can get the approvals that they need in a timely fashion. One thing on these recommendations that I want to be clear about: easing regulations is really important, but land use tools alone are not going to overcome the market barriers to housing supply in Bangor. It is expensive to build new, and developers don't get the same return on investment in Bangor that they do in other parts of the region. So public subsidy is also a very critical piece of the recommendations that we've made. And really, there's 2 recommendations here. That the first one's about dedicating funding, and the second one's about establishing clear processes to deploy that funding. So when we talk about dedicating local funding, it's really critical to have a predictable stream of funds for affordable housing development, whether that's $100,000 a year, whether it's an affordable housing bond across multiple years with a much larger capital investment. Having predictable funding is really critical for that developer capacity building as well. If people know that there's a steady stream of funds over the next few years to accomplish the city's housing goals, they're more likely to build a pipeline that aligns with those housing goals and that can use that funding. And so the other part of that then is establishing processes that clearly communicate the process as well as the city's priorities for the use of funding. And that can be used to meet a range of needs, to focus on some of those target housing types, target populations that we talked about, and otherwise to address kind of gaps in what the city is currently able to fund for housing. We also provide some guidance in the implementation plan about what that process looks like, from clearly stating local priorities and the criteria that you'll use to score responses, releasing an RFP annually on a predictable timeframe, evaluating and scoring responses, and then negotiating final awards with developers. So that's just a very brief update about the final recommendations in the housing plan, and I'll take that down. I can pull it back up if it's helpful.
Questions, comments?
I have
Counselor
a
Mao?
question. Page 11 of the housing study, across, on part of it says Bangor's top occupations and total employment. Under cashiers, it looks like you have a median wage of 80,000. I think that should be 30,000, shouldn't it?
It's possible that that's a typo. Let me take a look. We can certainly check.
I'd be surprised if that was the median wage.
It does seem like that might be wrong. Take a look. But we can certainly check that.
Any other questions?
It's called proofreading.
Counselor Fish?
I was glad to see a lot of data on housing from Maine Real Estate MLS, because it's live, updated daily. But I noticed a lot of the statistics and information came from data from a survey in 2022, which meant the data probably reflected in the past year over 2021. In the housing, I just think there's a lot of dynamics in the industry and in our communities that have changed greatly. So I was, to be honest, a little disappointed to see some of the statistics based on, a survey in 2022, which meant the data was accumulated over the previous year. So, it's, and that was the age of the labor force, the age of our homeowners, the age of the renters. I think the basic consensus is the same. We have a shortage in housing, but I think I was looking for something a little more up to date to help us today instead of
So that
yesterday.
data is from the American Community Survey, which is data from the US Census Bureau. The 2022 data was all that was available, and the 2023 numbers were published in last month. And the way that data works is it's a 5-year sample. So it's always kind of a lagging. So the 2022 data is a 5-year sample from the 5 years previous, including 2022. So the numbers don't shift a lot year to year. Even if we had the 2023 sample, it would include sort of 1 year more recent and drop off 1 year a little bit older. But that is really the established standard for this type of demographic and socioeconomic analysis. The American Community Survey has a great deal of data and a great deal of, it's a large statistically significant national survey, but as a result of that, that means that the data is always a little bit out of date. Where it was available, we did try to use more recent data sources, but the bulk of the sort of demographic trends really do draw on that American Community Survey data, which, as I mentioned, the 2023 numbers weren't available until last month.
Thank you.
Counselor Beck?
You mentioned the 2 deliverables, the implementation guide being an internal tool. Will city council get a copy of that to see as well?
Yeah, we can make sure that's in your packet.
You have 2 questions or just one?
Well, I did though, because the concern I had shared via email with the city manager earlier today was that the recommendations in the study itself seem rather sparse. And when you first open up the draft, there's actually the metadata behind it. The title that's on this file actually says Chapel Hill Affordable Housing Implementation Guide, and you search for that and you find the work that HRNA had done for Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and they've got a whole comprehensive affordable housing plan that their town council went and approved and adopted and are in the process of implementing step by step by step. And so my hope is that we, now that we've invested this money and time and effort on this study, that we come away with something like that this is how we see this getting fixed, we approve it, and then each week we're tackling something new, we're moving the ball forward every week. That's my hope, that this is what comes of this.
Yeah. I mean, I did.
I do apologize for the metadata oversight. That's not a attribute that we typically, edit. So it's really, if anything, it's a holdover of design, but not of content.
Oh, don't apologize. It was a beautiful rabbit hole. I really appreciated all the information I got from them. It's fascinating what this community has done. And, it's two ships passing in the night. I mean, we've
Yeah.
got a stagnant population where they're growing, so it's a tale of two cities, but it's interesting to see they get some ideas from how
Sure.
they're tackling it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the two deliverable approach was one that we discussed early on in the process of this project. Rather than having all of the recommendations in detail in the plan, we wanted to touch on kind of market trends and high level recommendations while providing some really concrete guidance to staff. So that was just a direction that this project took kind of early on in the process.
And also, I did spend some time looking at the Chapel Hill study, and we've done a lot of the things
Yeah.
already that were in their implementation. And some of it were things like, changing the tax rate and the things that
Yeah.
need state legislation to do for us to do, but yeah, I did spend some time on it and
Sure.
oh, we've already done that, so.
Yeah, well, the one conversation that they did that I like to see how it would work for us is possibly looking at an affordable housing bond. That would be something, what's all involved and what can it do for us? Cause, that's the biggest thing I hear from developers, is there's just no money in affordable housing. So we're gonna have to put the skin in the game if we wanna see, some new builds and, whether it's the affordable housing bond or a revolving, loan fund or housing trust or whatever it is, I'm excited to have those conversations and tackle this issue.
Other questions? On that page 12, that Councilor Mauer, talked about cashiers, 80,000. RNs making $30,000 a year,
Doesn't make sense.
that doesn't, seems like that would be a lot higher.
Is a median? Again, we will recheck that whole chart, but
Maybe that should be flipped.
Yeah, could be.
possible. We will double check.
That'd be great. So after reading the report, no surprise here at all. I think we all had a sense that we knew we have issues, and it's certainly low income and senior housing. And that's what we've been trying to tackle here for the last couple of years. Councilor Pelletier.
It was nice to see. I mean, we got a sense early on when we were talking about the Grandview project that what we were trying to do may align with where we wound up on the study. It is really nice to see that is sort of confirming that action that we took to be able to buy down the cost of development. And I agree with Councilor Beck. I'm really interested in figuring out what's the next step? How do we make that something that we can do, not just when we get once in a lifetime money, but as a city, have a fund to be able to do revolving projects like this to make it a sustainable part of our development.
We can do some research on that and bring that back.
Any other thoughts, questions? Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
very much.
Have a good evening. Next up on the agenda, Bangor Lights.
Yes, this was a project that was started probably about 5 years ago, at a staff level, working with, High Tide, High Tide Capital, sorry, I couldn't remember the last, their name of their company. Who's done a lot of work in, rehabilitation of downtown buildings, and, they worked with staff to, hey, can we work together on creating something, kind of really nice and fun at this intersection. It's a major intersection, there's people there all the time, pedestrians and cars. It's a heavily traveled space, and so we looked into what a lot of other cities around the country are doing, sort of the lighted sign of the letters of your city, to place there. When there were staffing changes and going into COVID, it was a project we just shelved for a while, and we took it off the shelf and said, hey, let's get some numbers on this. How much would this cost? Do we still want to do this? And And so I wanted to bring it to you to determine if you still want to do this, still want us to pursue this, or High Tide Capital is offered to, provide some funding to help with it.
Questions, comments? Councilor Dean?
I was very excited when I first saw this. I think it's kind of a funky little way of introducing our town, but we have received a number of emails from citizens who don't like it. They think it doesn't fit our brand. And I don't think we've determined what our brand is yet. So maybe that's something we need to determine with Betsy Lundy. We had talked about a brand for Bangor. Are we a little city? Are we a big town? Are we metropolitan? What are we? And maybe that's what we need to look at before we determine what the sign should look like.
Okay.
Other thoughts? Councilor Beck?
I'd just say I'd like to see the community involved. It sounds like a fun thing for people to come out and talk about and, put their input. Like one of the feedback that I got from people is, this is an art centric area and just the sign should feel more artsy. So the more we can include the community in making that kind of decision, the better.
Somebody mentioned your name. Betsy, do you want to comment?
Not that I wrote anything up in I was actually city's Betsy Lundy, Executive Director, Downtown Bangor Partnership, also resident. And I was actually a city staff person when this project first started in community and economic development. So it really has been kicked around and a lot of conversation about it for a long period of time. The Downtown Bangor Partnership was always enthusiastically in support of this particular sign. And we were really excited to see it finally coming to fruition. We think about it a lot like we do the Umbrella Sky project in downtown Bangor, where it's an installation that's really reflective of this particular moment in time and in what's actually happening in time. Our city has a long storied history, and that is represented in monuments and public works of art throughout the downtown region. And one of the things that's really fabulous about Bangor and what you see is that the art is reflective of Bangor through time, and the architecture is reflective of Bangor through time. We're not in some ways encapsulated in a moment like some of the other more quaint communities in Bangor that you see us every step of the way. We have mid-century modern architecture. We have the Scudic Symposium sculpture on the waterfront that the city of Bangor helped to fund along with other communities in Maine. And so this piece really feels kind of like the thing of the moment that reflects the Bangor of this particular time period. And we also see it really as a wonderful marketing tool. We talked about the branding. We're in the branding process right now with through the RERC with the Bright Brothers group, which they're specifically a place making branding company. They only do places. So we're really going to get somebody who's really expert in this area of like placemaking. And you're right, like this, we haven't finished that process yet. It's supposed to be wrapped up this spring, but I can pretty much guarantee you based on the progress that we've made so far that this would fit right in kind of the niche of so far what we've uncovered about Bangor and the story of Bangor. Which is very unique. It's modern and artsy and quirky. And those are all things that we're looking forward to leaning into. Yeah, and again, I think this would be like one of those like massively Instagrammable spots. And I don't think we can underscore how much traction we would get out of people taking pictures in front of these letters. If anybody has ever seen the Toronto letters, they're fabulous and they are probably the most photographed spot in Toronto. And I would hope for something like that with our Bangor letters, that when people come to Bangor, they would stand in front of them and we would get free marketing. So those are
St. Paul too.
yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a trend right now. We're on like this would be on the earlier side of the trend. It's like not everybody has them. And these ones look different. So one of the things I like about it is people have letters, but they look different in each community and they're kind of reflective of the community. Toronto actually just redid theirs recently and went through because they spend like I don't know, I want to say like 30 million on theirs. Went through a really big process to determine what they were gonna be like before they reinvested in them again. So yeah, so the Downtown Bangor Partnership definitely loves this, idea. Also understands all the other points that folks made. But it has been thought about a lot, it has been kicked about around a lot, has been talked about a lot. And, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen an artistic project from the painting on the ground to a mural on a wall to the hanging of the umbrellas that hasn't gotten some portion of the community to pick it apart, but the overall effect of it has been really, really powerful and successful at promoting the city of Bangor. And all of those comments seem to drop away after the thing is in place and after people have a chance to talk about it and share it.
Thank you. Councilor Leonard?
I just want to buttress Betsy's point with a very simple sentence regarding the Umbrella Sky project. There were also people who did not like that project in the beginning. And while I can understand why, no one can argue with the results of how much exposure the city has gotten by something that didn't even cost the city a dime to invest in. And this is another way for us to just invest in the rich culture that we have here in Bangor to, again, help promote the city, which is one of the major priorities of this council to do. And social media is the #1 best way to market Bangor to bring in more tourists to the area. I mean, we could argue if the lettering is ugly or not. I know we all have our own distinctive art tastes, obviously, but no one can deny the fact that just like the Umbrella Sky project, this is something that will just get exposed on social media, and this will promote Bangor more. For the amount of money that we be investing in this, the return on investment from just tourism alone would pay for this like tenfold.
Thank you. Councilor Beck?
Maybe it was mentioned and I missed it, but is this just white only, or do we have the ability to, like, if we want to make
Change color.
red, white, and blue for 4th of
Yeah.
July, see that?
Yes,
Right there, I
yeah.
think would be great to see some mock-ups of that, cause that kind of changes what rainbow for pride, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
and honestly, that was the original like plan, and like way back when we were looking at it was, it actually came up because we couldn't turn the garage column lights to pride colors anymore because it was like a fire hazard. And so that was like one of the things is like, oh, like there's the perfect number of letters in Bangor that we could like make that happen. And then, you know, so then that's kind of how we ended up going down that rabbit hole.
Other questions, comments? Councilor Fish?
So it's kind of hard to visualize how, I know you've been working on it, so to see it on paper and to see how it's actually gonna look on the footprint, you know, where it's placed. How high is it gonna be, like on the ground, people would be standing in, where, how would it
There's a
be?
picture of a guy standing next to it, so you get the basic concept that I think the letters are stand about 6 feet tall.
47 inches, yeah.
Yeah.
47 inches plus the little posts underneath, I think.
Yeah,
right?
plus 12.
Yeah,
Oh,
very
thank you.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I where, you know, I just would hate to see it be vandalized a lot, like a lot of and other things that tend to be.
Yep.
So, you know, we're gonna have lights in it and, you know, it just,
I can find out if there's, you know, any the material can be easily cleaned, you know, that type of.
or the lights, how would they be protected? How would the
think those
surface
are-
of it be protected?
This is a slightly different design than the one that I was working with originally, but I think they're marquee lights, right? So they're like, almost like you can like screw in anyone.
Well,
If
there's two types. So
Okay.
internally, I wanted internally lit or external, yeah.
Yeah.
To look at both. So there's an opaque lighting.
Yes,
Yeah,
right, like, so those have like a shield or a cover over them.
right.
And that's more like what the Toronto lights are, like,
Yeah.
like a,
That's one that St. Paul has too.
Yeah.
I think we do have to have a shield over them where it's
Yeah.
gonna be.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Councilor Mallard?
Quick question. Excuse me, it seems to me that this may be a congested area where do you want people involved in a sign there? That's a real tough area for traffic. Have you talked with the police or traffic control about that? I don't think I'd like to see it there because we have people down at Paul Bunyan, and that's kind of not so bad because they can have a place to park. There's no place to park here.
There's actually no place to park by Paul Bunyan. That's actually a really common complaint that we field with
Well,
the
but they
tourists,
can
but
drive into the parking lot of
but
the
it's pretty far
hotel
away.
parking lot, but there's nothing here.
I think the ultimate thing is when you put in a piece of something like this, or you put in something like Umbrella Sky, or you paint the street, those are all traffic calming measures that actually reduce the speed that people travel at, and they reduce the incidence of pedestrian vehicular accidents. It's like statistically been shown, and so I think it's an element that would be a traffic calming element and in keeping with kind of the goals of both the Village Partnership Initiative and goals that the Downtown Bangor Partnership has of making downtown Bangor a more pedestrian friendly place. We kind of want to gum up traffic a little bit more in order to cause people to slow down and take a look. Both at the people crossing the street and at the objects placed on the side of the street.
I think we have one sign up at the old bus station, don't we? The old bus terminal, the
Hopeful.
painted sign on the building.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not really in favor of it. I don't think we need to spend the money. It's gonna be a tough year for money and I'm just not ready to expend.
So, the only thing I can say to that would be, there was a donation coming from High Tide, not nearly,
If it's
Full amount,
100%
but-
funded, I
but the
don't have an
rest,
issue.
but the rest of it was being funded through, TIF. Which I know you have questions on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have major questions on
Yeah.
TIF. TIF money actually is taxpayer money. It's just used by the downtown and not being able to use it in other areas, so. If someone wants to pay for it without using TIF money or without using any of our money, I don't have an issue, but I do if we're putting money into it.
So we have before us a question of whether we want to proceed with this or not.
Another option is, I was planning on going to Cultural Commission this Friday, and I can also take it to Historic Preservation Commission the following week. And then come back if you want to get some more opinion. But those are the concerns you're getting concerns from the public.
Councilor Dean.
Well, isn't the TIF money coming from the downtown business owners?
from
And
them.
this will increase hopefully the downtown area and become more profitable and boost economy. So
Yeah. the
in
public
effect, they're
are-
kind of paying for it themselves by boosting our.
The paint,
Councilor Beck.
So it sounds like it's just a public education opportunity, just because it's TIF funds. And because some of the feedback I get is like, well, what is, what signal does it send if we're putting this big sign on, we have so many other problems to deal with and we're spending this money on it. But with TIF funds, we are kind of limited what we can do with it and where we can spend it, so. It's not really a, what, if we say yes to this, what do we say no to question? I don't think, is it? I mean, if we say yes to this, are we saying no to something else that we could be
Oh,
addressing
no.
with those same funds?
No.
Okay,
well, technically, yes, we are. If we could use the funds for
Right.
for
other
repair,
capital
I mean,
projects,
that was
right.
that makes no sense. We could use the funds to repair streets in the downtown area, fill potholes. There are lots of things that it can be used for. So no, that's not a valid statement. So I still stand that I will not.
And
vote
that's
for it.
fine. I just want to kind
Yeah,
of keep this
that's
moving.
fine. Keep it moving.
Why don't you plan on coming back after cultural committee and we can discuss it maybe a little bit further
Mhm.
and figure out maybe what the financing options might be
Okay,
as well.
we'll look into that further too.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to the housing study. I know it was a final report and it said action requested.
Oh,
But
that's
I
right,
know
I'm
that,
sorry.
but I know that there were some typos done and I'd rather get the typos completed.
Okay,
That's why I didn't take the action.
okay,
All right.
yep, we'll fix that
So
and then bring
It
it
should
back.
be a fairly routine item. when it comes back.
Okay.
All right,
Um,
next up, LD 2106.
Yes, this is.
Thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you, Betsy. This is a request to be part of testimony and provide testimony on LD 21, let's get my numbers mixed up. 2106, yes. This is part of the historic tax credit, right now, there's a cap on how much you can claim. And what this proposal does is it increases that ability from 5 to 10 million over, I think it's over 2 years. So the reason why I'm asking to participate in it is, you know, we hear a lot from people that have made major investments in your historic districts in the downtown that love this tax credit, but you know, construction costs are going up all the time, and so these projects that used to be a $1 million investment are easily now 10 million. And we want to encourage that continuation of those projects in the downtown, because it's really helped to revitalize the downtown. And so that's why I wanted to ask your permission to be able to support this.
Questions, comments? Counselor Leonard.
I just want to say I do approve you with this testimony. I don't know if you need a motion, but I'll make the first motion. I do have one question though. Just a simple one. Is the LD 146 or is the LD 2106?
2106.
2106. Okay, thank you.
Or is that a typo?
No,
146.
146.
It's LD 146.
I got renumbered because there were two numbers, yeah. 146 is the correct one.
Okay, we have a motion.
Okay.
Second, thank you.
I was waiting.
Any questions, comments? Seeing them, you go ahead and go down to Augusta, take care of it.
All right, thank you.
Last step is going into,
We'll have your copy of your report before you go down, your statement.
Yeah,
Okay, no because I was looking at and unless I'm going crazy, which is entirely possible at my age, the lady, and I don't remember, Jen in public health
Mhm.
submitted a written in testimony at Augusta. Did we ever receive a copy of that? I don't believe I've ever seen it.
I'll be sure that it happened, happened while I was away. I'm not sure that you did, but I'll make sure you have a copy of it and I'll send it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know what we're talking about, even though we're not there.
yeah, I'm gonna mirror a lot of the points that Maine Association of Planners has already
I'm
done.
sure.
We'll actually talk about that in theirs. So, yeah, that's why I gave you that, so you.
Yeah, no, that's what I assumed, and I only brought it up because I didn't get the other one, and I think it's, as a matter of practice, it's nice to tell us what you're saying.
Yeah,
Do you need a motion to go into executive session?
please.
I move we go into executive session 1 MRSA, section 4056E, consultation with city attorney concerning legal rights and duties of the committee. 1 MRSA, section 4056C, disposition of real property or economic development.
Thank you. There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Counselor Leonard,
Yes.
I think that was a yes.
That was a yes.
Counselor Fish,
yes.
Counselor Hawes.
Yes.
Counselor Mauer.
Yes.
I'll be a yes as well. So we are in executive session. We staying here, are we going?
Councilor Leonard, can you see us and hear us? Okay, thank you. Yep.
It is now 9:07. We just broke out of executive session and we have come to no decision as far as why we went into the executive session. So with that, we're adjourned.